Welcome to Zoom Etiquette, how to tutor online using Zoom features. My name is Emily Livingston. I'm one of the professional tutors at Normandale Community College, and I'll be walking you through this presentation. Together, we will consider best practices for appropriate conduct for online tutoring, explore solutions to some challenges unique to online tutoring, engage in an overview of Zoom features, and bookmark this. I don't expect you to remember everything that we talk about today, but this is really just kind of a resource that you can refer back to as needed. And you can, of course, reach out to any of the Normandale staff if you have questions about Zoom. Brainstorming do's and don'ts. So we're going to take a moment to just reflect on what you think might be good and bad things to do for online tutoring. And as you're thinking about what might be good or bad, I want you to consider what's called the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. If you haven't heard about this term before, the Universal Design for Learning is an educational framework that's based on research in learning sciences, including cognitive neuroscience, that guides the development of flexible learning environments and learning spaces that can accommodate individual learning differences. A very common example of universal design that's not specific to learning, but to environment would be having curb cutouts along sidewalks. They were originally designed for people in wheelchairs, but they also help people who have mobility issues that can still walk, but maybe are using a cane, mothers pushing strollers, people moving shopping carts. And so by making one change for one group of people, it benefits a whole other range of people. So thinking about what tools could be used to serve a specific audience that might ultimately be good for all students that you're working with online. So consider UDL as you're thinking about some best practices for online tutoring. Some of the best practices that we want you to consider are visual. You want to make sure that you are welcoming and in the center of your camera with your video on when your tutee logs in. We want to make sure that you're dressed appropriately. Working from home can lead to more relaxed outfits, but make sure that it is something that you'll be comfortable wearing in the tutoring center. And if it's not something that you'll be comfortable wearing in the tutoring center, then you shouldn't be wearing it while you are tutoring. You want to be respectful of or minimize distractions for those that you're tutoring with, and that could involve blurring your background or putting up a virtual background, or kind of minimizing the amount of distractions that might be visible in the space behind you. So if you have your desk facing into the center of a room that you share with other people, you might just turn for tutoring your chair around so that they're looking at a blank wall rather than people moving around the living room. Things to consider. In terms of auditory support, having a headset or headphones reduces background noise. So, if you're working from home, there are certain things that you cannot control, like construction outside or noisy neighbors or, other people working in your home environment, kids. But having a headset will kind of help minimize those sounds that are picked up by your computer. So please use either a headset or headphones while you're tutoring. Be aware of the background noises that you can minimize. If you do have a private space that you can work in, close that door to make sure that noise isn't coming in. Zoom has a transcript feature, and so you would want to make sure that the closed captions are on kind of as a default. Zoom doesn't make it easy to turn that on. We'll talk about how you turn that on each time so that it's accessible for students who maybe have a bad internet connection and are having trouble hearing you. They could also read, or if they're hard of hearing, or maybe English is an additional language for them, having that transcript can be a really useful resource for all of those people. If possible, work in an isolated space and try and avoid eating food during your session, because that's just some extra noise that can be avoided, that could be a distraction. That said, we're all living, working, and studying in a pandemic, so be flexible with yourself and with others, and just remember to be kind and welcoming, and give grace and patience when needed, because we all live in weird times. We're going to look at some scenarios, and we have these posted on the D2L discussion board, so I'll read through them. You can either pause after each one or skip this section of the video and just go read them yourselves and post yourselves and then come back, whatever you prefer. Scenario 1, a student you're working with has a screaming child in the background. The student is apologizing to you. What do you do or say? Scenario 2, you're halfway through a session with a student and your internet goes out. What do you do? Scenario 3, You're about to start a session with a student and your roommate, sibling, neighbor, whomever starts practicing the drums. What do you do? Scenario 4, you are mid-session with a student and you've begun to suspect that they're driving. What do you do? There are going to be some things that you might encounter during a tutoring session that you might want to talk to your supervisor about. If there is a flashing or any nudity that occurs in a tutoring session, please immediately report that to your supervisor. If there is any harassment or microaggressions that occur during a tutoring session or anything else that makes you feel uncomfortable, reach out to a supervisor. If it's something that's making you incredibly uncomfortable, please end the session if you would like and reach out. You are not alone, even though you're tutoring online. We are here to support you, and we want to make sure that this is a safe, positive environment. I know this slide can be a little bit scary, but this is very rare, and we just want to make sure that we talk about it in case it happens to you. We don't expect it to happen to you, but we wanted to make sure that we covered it so that you had a sense of what to do if it does, so that you don't feel abandoned. But again, online tutoring is delightful. These things probably will not come up, but if they do, know that you are supported. Are there any other sticky situations that you've experienced, heard rumors of, or have nightmares about? Don't worry, you can add those to the other scenarios form and we can discuss the best possible ways to handle those situations. These are going to be some best practices for mentoring students on technology. The first thing that you want to do is you want to practice using Zoom both on your computer and your phone so that you feel confident in walking any students that you're working with through the steps of using the different features. We will kind of have some screenshots as part of this presentation to help assist with that, but it's really important that you spend a little bit of time getting familiar with Zoom and how its features change on different devices because students, you don't know what they're going to be interacting with you using. Number 2, if it's not working for a student, pivot. Don't let technology be an additional barrier to accessing knowledge. So be prepared to do something different in your tutoring session if what you're trying isn't working. And number 3, as you're walking students through the steps to kind of do something, maybe they're sharing their screen or using the whiteboard for the first time, do your best to avoid phrases like it's easy and just when you're giving directions. Doing a new thing can be super hard until you know how to do it. So be respectful as the student is engaging in the productive struggle and don't say things like it's easy or just because it's not easy and it's so hard. So just be mindful of that as you're directing students. Let's talk about Zoom features. If you're hosting meetings for the desktop or the phone, you want to make sure that you're either logging in through the app using the minstate.zoom.us or through your web browser at minstate.zoom.us. You'll click the host button and you log in with your star ID and password. If you have any problems logging in, Bina can kind of help you troubleshoot that. Live transcript. Always enabling the live transcript is a great implementation of universal design principles. It makes learning a lot more accessible for many people for many reasons. There are some people for whom it might be a distraction, so making sure that you know how to talk to students through turning it on and off is going to be great, but making sure that you know how to turn it on for students is important. Zoom will not let on be the default, so you'll have to set it up every time that you open a new meeting. And just because you've turned on the live transcript button doesn't automatically turn on for students on a desktop. So you'll have to be able to walk students through that process, and we'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Once you have turned on the transcript for students, along the bottom there's the live transcript button, and they would want to click the show subtitle rather than the view full transcript. That's the view full transcript is going to be like a full transcript on the right side, kind of like chat, but of something that everyone's saying, whereas subtitle will be the text that appears, kind of like closed captions if you're watching TV. You can change the settings of the subtitle. So if somebody is having trouble viewing it because it's too small or having trouble viewing things that you're sharing on the screen because the text is too big, you can change the subtitle settings. That's the third option. When you hover over the live transcript part of the Zoom menu bar and you click on subtitle settings, and then this is a screenshot of what kind of changes you can do. You can drag from small to large, and that's kind of what the student wants to be adjusting. So viewing the live transcripts on mobile devices happens automatically. So once you turn on the closed captioning, you can see kind of an example of what the transcript looks like. It's on the left-hand side of the screen. If students want to see the full transcript instead of just the captions, they would go to the 3 dots along the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And then the second option down on that list, view full transcript, would be the full transcript of the conversation that you're having. Chat is a great feature. Chats that are sent before a person joins in a meeting are not accessible to them, so be ready to copy and paste those back in or resend any key links to students. Chats disappear for meeting participants as soon as the session ends. So if there's anything important in chat, make sure that the student has saved, copied, or screenshotted it. With this latest update in Zoom, the default setting is that students cannot copy information from your chat. So you can either change that setting when you log into Zoom through the min state URL, or just let them know that they need to take a screenshot and can't copy anything from the chat that you send them. On a mobile device, the chat is going to be under that More section. So if they tap the screen, the menu should pull up from the bottom, and then in the lower right-hand corner, 3 dots, and then the first thing that comes up is Chat. So they would click on that button. Notice that while they're reading chat on a mobile device, they can't see anything that you're sharing. And so if a student is interacting with you on mobile, be mindful that they can't see the video and the chat at the same time. Share screening is a great feature for both you and students to use during a tutoring session. Moving between the windows and applications while screen sharing can be a struggle for some students, because usually when you set it up, you're picking a specific application to share. There is an option where they can share the desktop, but often students don't pick that. So if you want them to do that, you can talk them through that as they're sharing. You can also set it up so that your screen share interrupts the students, and that can be a really helpful reset tool if a student gets lost and they weren't sharing their full desktop with you. So just something to keep in mind as you're navigating the share screen with students. So again, the share screen is kind of that green button in the center. I have found that often students overlook that button when they're looking through the menu because it is a different color. It's meant to highlight it, but sometimes it can conceal it. So if they share the screen, you'll be seeing like anything. So if they're moving between windows or applications, sharing the screen is probably a best practice. But like if they have their phone set up to give notifications on their computer, there might be some privacy issues. So you might let a student just be aware of that. If you're sharing and you're going to be doing a video, you want to make sure that you are also including the sound. And that's going to be that small button down there. If a student is watching a video with you, make sure that if you're sharing the screen with them or they're sharing the screen with you, that the share sound box is clipped or checked. And then if you optimize for a video clip, that can be really nice for students if you're watching a video with them who have low bandwidth. Just know that the video will disappear, so they won't be able to see you as they are watching a video. So keep that in mind as you're choosing what settings you want. So if you are, for some reason, hosting a tutoring session on your cell phone, you can also share your screen. Depending on what kind of phone you have and what apps you have downloaded, the options for your share screen might look a little bit different than mine. But I think that the screen is always an option and always the same, and so I would recommend starting there. So if you share your screen, it's going to come up with this notification, and you can start the broadcast when you're ready. And that will share everything that's on your screen. So that might be great for if you want to share a whiteboard, or if you want to share a specific app or website with the student. All of that will work with the screen button. You can also share specific websites. This is what the website URL looks like. You would type it in there, and then it would appear to them like that. So this is me just sharing Google from my cell phone. Whiteboard is a really great feature for drawing and annotating. You can set your profile to save your whiteboards, and then you could email them to students after the session, or just ask them if they are computer savvy to take a screenshot or like a physical picture of their computer screen. So the whiteboard is always usually in the same place. It's usually the second option in the first row of the share screen. So you would just click on the whiteboard, make sure that the blue is around it. Right now the screen is selected, but you click on whiteboard and then press the blue share button. And then when you have the whiteboard open, your Zoom menu tool will change and you'll see this annotate feature. And that's where it will pull up all the different kinds of drawings and text you can add. The whiteboard is infinite, but it's one screen at a time. So you can fill this up with information. And then this blue circle is highlighting kind of a gray button that's hard to see, but it's a plus screen. So if you press that, it will pull up a new blank white screen, and then you can navigate between them using arrows. But so you can keep working through multiple screens if you have a long problem or lots of information to cover. So these are the different annotation features on the desktop. This is kind of the main menu. You can select text, draw, stamp, spotlight, erase. And this is format, so you can change the color of the text, the thickness of the line, or like the color of the shapes is all kind of here, the font as well. Undo, redo, clear, and save. So under the format button, there you have color options, you have line width options, and then font formatting. So you can do bold, italics, and change the font size. Under the draw tool, this is just a line. This is more like a highlighter, and then various shapes and lines that you can create as well. With the stamp feature, it's literally just a stamp. Like you can't do like a long arrow or anything like that. You would want to use the draw tool if you wanted an arrow of a specific shape, but it will literally make this little green arrow. Check. X, star, heart, question mark. The spotlight is if you want to draw the student's attention. I always just use my mouse. I never use the spotlight, but if you want to, you can. And then when you're saving the whiteboard, if you want to download it, you can save it either as a PNG or a PDF. Both are relatively accessible files. I think that people are more familiar with PDFs. PNGs are kind of more how pictures and images are saved. So I would recommend changing the setting to a PDF if you're downloading it on behalf of a student, just to keep it less stressful for them. When you're a participant on desktop, what you would do is across the top, you would see that you are viewing, the tutor screen. And then under view options, you would press that little down triangle and click on annotate. And then this would pull up the same bar that you have. So this that you have access to as the host is the same thing that they would have access to as a participant. And so they could go ahead and draw and work through problems with you using these features as well, if they are comfortable. Reactions on the desktop. They're there if you want to use them. Most reactions will fade after a certain amount of time, but students who raise their hand will have to lower it. It actually changes the order that their video appears in if you're hosting more people. So that's just an interesting fact. The default of reactions is kind of that yellow inhuman skin tone, but if you wanted, you could change it to a range of more human skin tones in your profile when you're setting up your Zoom account. Here are the reactions. On a mobile phone, reactions are going to be under that 3 dots more, and then down at the bottom, you can see all of the options. Polls and breakout rooms. You probably won't need these for online tutoring, but if you do have something that you need to send to students, I tend to prefer Google Forms or Kahoot to polls because they have more flexible input types. Zoom polls are kind of like good for one thing. With one-on-one tutoring, you probably won't send students to breakout rooms, but you can use them as an alternative instead of leaving students in the waiting room if they're early. I usually will just shoot students a message if I have students who are kind of backed up in the waiting room and be like, hey, our appointment's at this time. I look forward to seeing you then. Or, hey, I'm running a few minutes late. I'll let you in at this time. A quick note on remote control. One of the things that you could do as a Zoom host is request remote control of somebody who is also on a desktop. You can't do it if they're on a laptop or a tablet, but as a peer tutor, don't do it. Just walk the student patiently through the steps to get the thing done. And if it's really impossible and it's not working, then I would just recommend that they come in for an in-person tutoring session where we can provide more direct support. So do not control a student's computer. Congratulations, you have survived the Zoom feature overview. So we have some connect and reflect questions. Again, this is a forum in D2L. Post there. Think about what feature or features of Zoom are you most comfortable with using while tutoring? What feature or features of Zoom, if any, are you considering incorporating that's new? And then what are some of your favorite tools for online learning outside of Zoom? for tutoring for class or whatever you use them for. So feel free to post answers to one or all of those questions, and happy tutoring.